In the sterile halls of UCSF Medical Center, where hope and despair dance together in a delicate balance, there exists a man known simply as Dr. Miracle. His real name is Dr. Kim, but his colleagues whisper his nickname with reverence and awe. With hands that move faster than lightning and a heart that refuses to accept defeat, he has earned his reputation by pulling patients back from the very edge of death. Today's story begins with Marla Levy, a 41-year-old woman whose life has been shaped by a heart that was never quite right. Born with supravalvular aortic stenosis, a congenital defect that narrows the main artery carrying blood from the heart, Marla has already survived 2 major heart surgeries. But now, as she lies on the operating table for what should be a routine triple bypass, her heart stops beating and refuses to start again. The operating room falls silent, except for the steady beep of monitors that seem to mock the stillness of Marla's chest. Dr. Kim stands over her, his surgical mask hiding the determination etched across his face, but his eyes tell the story of a man who has never learned the word impossible. For 6 long days, Marla will teeter between life and death, connected to a machine that breathes for her and pumps her blood, while Dr. Kim fights the greatest battle of his medical career. This is not just a story about medical procedures or technological miracles. This is a story about the unbreakable bond between a doctor who refuses to give up and a patient who trusts him with her life. It's about a family who waits in agony, praying for a miracle they're not sure will come. And it's about the moment when science, skill, and sheer human determination collide to create what can only be called a resurrection. In the world of cardiac surgery, where every second counts and every heartbeat matters, Dr. Kim has seen it all. But Marla's case will test every ounce of his expertise, every fiber of his resolve, and every beat of his own heart. Because sometimes, keeping someone alive isn't just about medical knowledge. It's about believing in miracles when everyone else has stopped believing. If you've ever wondered what it takes to bring someone back from the dead, if you've ever questioned whether miracles really exist in modern medicine, then stay with us. Because what happens next will challenge everything you think you know about the limits of human endurance and the power of never giving up. Marla Levy's relationship with her heart began before she even took her first breath. While still in her mother's womb, something went wrong during the delicate process of cardiac development. The aorta, the body's main highway for oxygenated blood, began to narrow in a way that would define her entire life. This condition, known as supravalvular aortic stenosis, affects only 1 in 20,000 births, making Marla part of a very exclusive club that no one wants to join. At 21, when most young women are thinking about careers and relationships, Marla received the diagnosis that would change everything. The narrowing in her aorta was significant enough to require careful monitoring, but not yet severe enough for surgery. For 6 years, she lived with the knowledge that a ticking time bomb resided in her chest, never knowing when it might demand attention. The first surgery came when she was 27, living in Southern California with dreams and plans that suddenly seemed fragile. The operation was supposed to be routine, replace the narrowed section of aorta with a human valve, a procedure that cardiac surgeons perform regularly. But Marla's heart had other plans. When the surgeon finished the delicate work and tried to restart her heart, nothing happened. The silence in that operating room was deafening. What followed was 3 hours of controlled chaos. The surgical team worked frantically, trying every technique in their arsenal to coax life back into Marla's still heart. Finally, in desperation, they performed an emergency right coronary bypass, essentially creating a new route for blood to reach her heart muscle. After 8 grueling hours, her heart finally consented to beat again, and Marla took her first breath as someone who had already died once and lived to tell about it. For 14 years, that human valve served her well. She moved to the Bay Area, built a life, fell in love, and almost forgot about the battle that had been fought in her chest all those years ago. But hearts, especially hearts that have been through trauma, have long memories. During a routine echocardiogram at UCSF, the devastating news came. The valve was deteriorating at an alarming rate. Dr. Kim first heard about Marla Levy on a Tuesday morning during the cardiac surgery team meeting. As the details of her case were presented, he listened with the focused intensity that had made him legendary among his colleagues. 2 previous surgeries, valve deterioration, and now evidence of arteriosclerosis, the hardening and narrowing of arteries that would require bypass surgery. It was a complex case, the kind that many surgeons might approach with caution. But Dr. Kim saw something different in Marla's file. He saw a fighter, someone whose heart had already proven its resilience. As he reviewed her medical history, he made a decision that would bind their fates together. He would not just treat her condition, he would give her the chance at a normal life that her defective heart had always denied her. The second valve replacement surgery went smoothly. The mechanical valve was placed with precision, and Marla's recovery was progressing well. But Dr. Kim knew this was just the beginning. The arteriosclerosis in her coronary arteries was severe, and waiting too long for the bypass surgery could be fatal. He scheduled the triple bypass for just 10 days later, a timeline that raised eyebrows among his colleagues but reflected his understanding of Marla's unique situation. The morning of the triple bypass surgery dawned gray and cold, as if the San Francisco sky knew what was coming. In the preoperative area, Marla lay on a gurney, trying to process the fact that she was about to undergo her third open-heart surgery in 2 weeks. Her husband held her hand, both of them putting on brave faces while terror churned in their stomachs like a living thing. Dr. Kim visited her before the surgery, his presence immediately calming despite the gravity of the situation. There was something about the way he looked at his patients, not as medical cases or surgical challenges, but as human beings whose lives hung in the balance of his decisions. When he spoke to Marla, his voice carried the quiet confidence of a man who had wrestled death before and won. "We're going to take good care of you today," he said, his hand briefly touching her shoulder. It was a simple gesture, but it carried the weight of a promise. In that moment, Marla understood why everyone called him Dr. Miracle. It wasn't just his surgical skill. It was his ability to make people believe that impossible things were possible. The operating room at UCSF was a temple of modern medicine, filled with machines that beeped and hummed with electronic life. As Marla was wheeled in, she caught a glimpse of Dr. Kim scrubbing in through the glass partition. His movements were methodical, almost ritualistic, as he prepared to hold her life in his hands once again. The anesthesia took hold, and Marla drifted into the deepest sleep of her life, unaware that she was about to embark on a journey to the very edge of existence. Dr. Kim and his team worked with the synchronized precision of a symphony orchestra, each member playing their part in the complex choreography of cardiac surgery. The bypass surgery itself went according to plan. 3 new pathways were created around Marla's blocked arteries, giving her heart the blood supply it desperately needed. Dr. Kim's hands moved with their legendary speed and precision, every cut and suture placed with the expertise that had earned him his reputation. For 3 hours, everything proceeded exactly as it should. Then came the moment that would haunt everyone in that room for months to come. As the heart-lung machine was gradually reduced and Dr. Kim prepared to allow Marla's heart to resume its natural rhythm, nothing happened. The cardiac monitor showed a flat line that seemed to stretch into eternity. Her heart, exhausted from years of struggle and 3 major surgeries in such a short time, had simply decided it had had enough. Dr. Kim's expression behind his surgical mask remained calm, but his eyes told a different story. This was the moment every cardiac surgeon dreads, when technical perfection meets biological reality and finds itself wanting. But giving up was not in Dr. Kim's vocabulary. He began the complex process of trying to restart Marla's heart, using every technique at his disposal. Hours passed in the operating room. Outside, Marla's family waited in agony, receiving periodic updates that became increasingly grim. Dr. Kim's senior physician assistant, Anya, found herself in the heartbreaking position of preparing the family for the possibility that their loved one might not wake up from this surgery. As the sun set over San Francisco, casting long shadows through the hospital windows, Dr. Kim made a decision that would define his career and Marla's life. If her heart wouldn't beat on its own, he would find another way to keep her alive until it was ready to try again. The word impossible simply didn't exist in his medical vocabulary. ECMO, extracorporeal membrane oxygenation. To most people, it's just a collection of medical letters that mean nothing. But to Dr. Kim and his team, ECMO represented hope in its most technological form. This remarkable machine could take over the function of both heart and lungs, essentially keeping a patient alive while their body decided whether it wanted to continue fighting for life. The decision to place Marla on ECMO was not made lightly. It's a high-risk procedure reserved for the most desperate situations, when conventional medicine has exhausted its options. As Dr. Kim explained the situation to Marla's family, the weight of the decision was evident in every word. This was uncharted territory, a place where medicine meets miracles and hope becomes a treatment plan. The ECMO machine itself is both beautiful and terrifying in its complexity. Tubes carry blood from Marla's body to the machine, where it's oxygenated and filtered before being returned to her circulation. In essence, the machine became her heart and lungs, performing the most basic functions of life while her own organs rested and hopefully recovered. Marla's husband stood in the cardiac intensive care unit, staring at the woman he loved, now connected to a maze of tubes and wires that seemed to dwarf her human form. The rhythmic sounds of the ECMO machine filled the room. Whoosh, click, a mechanical heartbeat that had taken the place of her own. Nurses moved around her bed with practiced efficiency, monitoring every parameter, adjusting every setting, treating her with the reverence due to someone hovering between worlds. Dr. Kim visited multiple times each day, his trained eyes assessing every detail of Marla's condition. Being on ECMO is not without risks. The longer a patient remains connected, the higher the chances of complications. Blood clots, infections, and organ damage all became daily concerns that required constant vigilance. Every day that passed was both a victory and an increasing gamble with Marla's future. The hospital staff began to whisper about the woman in bed 7 of the cardiac ICU. Some had never seen a patient remain on ECMO for so long. Others wondered quietly whether Dr. Kim was pushing the boundaries of medical ethics, keeping someone alive who might be beyond saving. But Dr. Kim remained steadfast in his conviction that Marla's heart just needed time to heal itself. Marla's family established a routine around her bedside. Her children took turns reading to their unconscious mother, believing somehow that their voices might reach her in whatever realm her consciousness had retreated to. Her husband brought photos and played her favorite music, creating a cocoon of familiar love around her mechanically sustained body. On the third day, Dr. Kim made his first attempt to wean Marla from the ECMO machine. The process is delicate and dangerous, gradually reducing the machine's support while monitoring the heart's response. For several hours, there were encouraging signs. Some electrical activity appeared on the cardiac monitor, weak but present, like a distant lighthouse beacon cutting through fog. But the celebration was premature. As the machine's support decreased, Marla's heart once again fell silent. The disappointment in the ICU was palpable, but Dr. Kim's resolve only strengthened. If her heart wasn't ready today, they would try again tomorrow. And if not tomorrow, then the next day. Time, he believed, was the medicine Marla needed most. The nights in the ICU were the hardest. The normal bustle of hospital activity slowed to a whisper, and the sound of the ECMO machine seemed to echo louder in the relative quiet. Nurses would find Marla's husband asleep in the chair beside her bed, his hand resting on her arm, as if his touch alone could call her back to life. Dr. Kim would often stop by during these late-night hours, standing silently at the foot of her bed, studying her condition with the intensity of a scholar reading sacred text. His colleagues had begun to question his judgment, but he knew something they didn't understand. Sometimes healing requires a leap of faith that extends beyond medical textbooks. Time moves differently in an intensive care unit. Minutes stretch into hours, hours blur into days, and days feel like lifetimes when you're watching someone you love fight for their life. For Marla's family, the cardiac ICU became their world, a place where hope and despair took turns standing guard over her bed. By the fourth day, the strain was showing on everyone's faces. Dr. Kim maintained his professional composure, but the nursing staff could see the weight of responsibility in his shoulders. Anya, his senior physician assistant, found herself in the difficult position of managing not just Marla's medical care, but the emotional needs of a family that was slowly watching their foundation crumble. The ECMO machine had become a character in this medical drama, its steady rhythm the only thing standing between Marla and the final darkness. The intensive care nurses had grown attached to their silent patient, speaking to her as they performed their hourly checks, believing that somewhere in her medically induced sleep she could hear them encouraging her to keep fighting. Marla's children struggled to understand how their vibrant mother could be so still, so silent, while machines did the work her body had always done automatically. They asked questions that had no easy answers. Why won't her heart start? When will she wake up? What if the machines stop working? Each question was a small knife that cut deeper into their father's already bleeding heart. Dr. Kim called a family meeting on the 5th day. In a small conference room adjacent to the ICU, he sat across from people whose lives he held in his hands as surely as he had held Marla's heart during surgery. His words were measured, honest about the risks while still maintaining the hope that had become his signature approach to impossible cases. "I want you to know that every day Marla remains stable on ECMO is a victory," he said, his voice carrying the weight of experience and the burden of responsibility. "Her body is healing in ways we can't always see or measure. Sometimes the heart needs to rest completely before it's ready to work again." But privately, Dr. Kim was fighting his own battle with doubt. Medical literature suggested that patients who remained on ECMO for more than a few days rarely recovered full cardiac function. Statistics and studies painted a grim picture that contradicted everything he believed about Marla's potential for recovery. Yet something deep in his medical intuition told him to keep fighting. The fifth day brought a new complication: signs of kidney stress. Marla's body was beginning to show the strain of prolonged mechanical support. Blood tests revealed changes that concerned the nephrology team, and discussions began about additional interventions that might be needed. Each new medical issue was like adding weight to a scale that was already dangerously close to tipping toward defeat. Marla's husband found himself caught between hope and preparation for the worst. Well-meaning friends suggested that maybe it was time to let go, words that fell like stones into the quiet desperation of his vigil. But every time he looked at Dr. Kim, every time he saw that unwavering determination in the surgeon's eyes, he found the strength to believe for one more day. The nursing staff had begun to treat Marla's room like a shrine. Fresh flowers appeared daily, brought by staff members who had been touched by her story. Cards and messages of encouragement covered every available surface, creating a paper tapestry of hope from people who had never met her but were pulling for her recovery. On the sixth day, as dawn broke over San Francisco Bay, Dr. Kim made a decision that would test everything he believed about medicine, miracles, and the indomitable power of the human heart. He would make one more attempt to wean Marla from ECMO, and this time, he would stake his reputation and her life on the belief that her heart was finally ready to beat again. Dawn on the sixth day brought with it an energy that the cardiac ICU staff had never felt before. Dr. Kim arrived earlier than usual, his movements purposeful as he reviewed Marla's latest test results and vital signs. There was something different in his demeanor, a quiet confidence that seemed to radiate from his very being as he prepared for what he knew would be the most crucial attempt of his career. Anya noticed it first, the subtle changes in Marla's condition that spoke to her improving stability on ECMO. Her kidney function had stabilized overnight, and more importantly, there were signs of increased cardiac electrical activity that hadn't been present in previous days. It was as if Marla's heart was finally stirring from its deep sleep, ready to remember its purpose. The weaning process began slowly, with Dr. Kim personally overseeing every adjustment to the ECMO machine. Unlike previous attempts, this time there was no rush, no pressure to achieve immediate results. Instead, Dr. Kim approached it like a delicate negotiation between machine and heart, gradually asking Marla's cardiovascular system to remember how to function independently. Marla's family gathered in the waiting room, having been told that another attempt would be made today. They had been through this emotional roller coaster twice before, their hopes raised only to be crushed when her heart refused to cooperate. This time, they tried to steel themselves for another disappointment while secretly harboring the desperate hope that today might be different. In the ICU, the atmosphere was electric with anticipation. Nurses who had cared for Marla around the clock found reasons to linger near her room, watching the monitors with the intensity of people witnessing a miracle in progress. The cardiac monitor showed increasingly promising signs. Weak at first, but gradually stronger electrical activity that suggested her heart was preparing to resume its life-sustaining rhythm. Dr. Kim stood at Marla's bedside, his trained eyes never leaving the various monitors that told the story of her body's response to decreased mechanical support. His hands, those legendary hands that had earned him his reputation, rested gently on the bed rail as if he could somehow transfer his own life force to the woman who had trusted him with everything she had. As the ECMO support decreased to minimal levels, something remarkable began to happen. The cardiac monitor, which had shown only the faintest electrical activity for 6 days, began to display a rhythm that grew stronger with each passing minute. Slowly, carefully, Marla's heart began to beat on its own for the first time since the surgery that had brought her to the edge of death. The first spontaneous heartbeat registered on the monitor like a declaration of victory. Then another, and another. Within minutes, Marla's heart had established a steady, strong rhythm that brought tears to the eyes of everyone watching. Anya, who had prepared herself for another failure, found herself crying behind her surgical mask as she witnessed what could only be called a resurrection. Dr. Kim's expression remained professionally controlled, but those who knew him could see the profound relief and joy in his eyes. He had staked his reputation, his beliefs, and 6 days of his life on the conviction that Marla's heart would beat again. And now, as he listened to the steady beeping of her cardiac monitor, he knew that his faith in the power of patience and persistence had been vindicated. The process of fully weaning Marla from ECMO took several more hours, each step carefully monitored and adjusted. But her heart continued to beat with increasing strength and regularity, as if it had simply needed those 6 days to remember its purpose and gather the strength to resume its eternal task of sustaining life. When Marla's husband was finally allowed back into the ICU and heard the sound of his wife's heart beating on its own, he collapsed into the chair beside her bed and wept with a relief so profound that it shook his entire body. The woman he loved, the mother of his children, the center of his world, was fighting her way back to life one heartbeat at a time. The transition from artificial life support to natural healing is not like waking up from a normal sleep. For Marla, consciousness returned slowly, like dawn breaking through layers of thick clouds. First came the awareness of sound, the steady beeping that had become the soundtrack of her survival, the soft whispers of nurses checking her vital signs, the familiar voice of her husband reading to her from a book she couldn't yet focus enough to understand. Dr. Kim monitored her neurological recovery with the same intensity he had brought to her cardiac care. Being on ECMO for 6 days, while life-saving, carried risks of its own. Brain function, cognitive ability, and physical recovery all hung in the balance as Marla's body slowly remembered how to sustain itself. Each small sign of improvement, a flutter of eyelids, a slight movement of fingers, a change in breathing pattern, was celebrated like a major victory. The first words Marla spoke were barely audible, a whisper that asked simply, "What happened?" The relief in her husband's voice as he explained that she had been asleep for 6 days, that her heart had stopped but was now beating again, that Dr. Kim had refused to give up on her, was audible to everyone in the ICU. She had not just survived, she had returned from a place where few people ever get a second chance. As Marla's awareness increased, so did her understanding of just how close she had come to never waking up again. The ECMO machine, which had been her lifeline for nearly a week, was now silent beside her bed like a faithful guardian that had completed its mission. The tubes and wires that had sustained her were gradually being removed as her body proved it could once again handle the basic functions of staying alive. Dr. Kim's first conversation with his conscious patient was emotional for both of them. When he walked into her room and saw her eyes tracking his movement, saw her lips form his name in recognition, the professional composure he had maintained for 6 days finally cracked. Here was living proof that his refusal to accept defeat had been justified, that sometimes medicine required as much faith as it did science. "You called me your miracle patient," Marla whispered, her voice still weak but filled with gratitude and wonder. Dr. Kim smiled, the first genuine smile he had allowed himself since her heart had stopped beating on the operating table 6 days earlier. "No," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. "You're the miracle. I just refused to let you go." The rehabilitation process began immediately. 6 days of being unconscious and on mechanical support had taken its toll on Marla's body. Her muscles had weakened, her lungs needed to regain their full capacity, and her overall stamina was that of someone who had quite literally come back from the dead. But with each passing day, each small milestone of recovery, it became clear that her heart was not just beating, it was beating strongly. Physical therapists worked with Marla to help her regain her strength. The first time she sat up in bed was a celebration. The first time she stood, albeit with assistance, brought tears to the eyes of nurses who had cared for her during her darkest hours. Every step of her recovery was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of refusing to give up. Marla's family watched in amazement as the woman they had almost lost came back to them piece by piece. Her personality returned gradually. First her sense of humor, then her concern for others, finally her determination to not just survive, but to thrive. She asked detailed questions about her care, wanting to understand every aspect of what had kept her alive during those 6 days when she existed in the space between life and death. The cardiac rehabilitation team developed a comprehensive plan for Marla's recovery. The triple bypass surgery had been successful, her mechanical valve was functioning perfectly, and most remarkably, her heart showed no signs of damage from the extended period on ECMO. It was as if those 6 days of rest had allowed her cardiovascular system to heal and strengthen in ways that normal recovery could never have achieved. As Marla prepared for discharge from the hospital, she made a request that surprised everyone. She wanted to thank every person who had played a role in keeping her alive. From the surgeons to the ECMO technicians, from the ICU nurses to the cleaning staff who had maintained her room during her unconscious vigil, she insisted on personally expressing her gratitude to each individual who had been part of her miracle. 3 months after her discharge, Marla Levy walked through the doors of UCSF Medical Center not as a patient, but as a living testament to the power of never giving up. She had called ahead to arrange a visit with Dr. Kim and his team, wanting to show them what their refusal to accept defeat had accomplished. The transformation was remarkable. Color had returned to her cheeks, strength to her step, and most importantly, joy to her eyes. Dr. Kim was in the middle of reviewing surgical cases when he was paged to come to the cardiac surgery unit. He had no idea what awaited him, but when he rounded the corner and saw Marla standing there with her family, his usually serious demeanor transformed completely. The man who had earned his reputation for maintaining professional composure in the most stressful situations lit up, as Marla later described it, like he had seen a pot of gold. The reunion was emotional for everyone present. Nurses who had cared for Marla during her 6 days on ECMO gathered around, hardly able to believe that this vibrant, healthy woman was the same person who had lain motionless in bed 7 of the cardiac ICU. Anya, Dr. Kim's senior physician assistant, openly wept as she hugged the patient she had helped guide back from the edge of death. Dr. Kim examined Marla's surgical sites and listened to her heart with the wonder of a scientist witnessing an impossible outcome. The mechanical valve was functioning perfectly, the bypass grafts were patent and strong, and most remarkably, her heart rhythm was steady and robust. Not only had she survived her ordeal, but she had achieved the kind of cardiac function that many people with healthy hearts never experience. "I told everyone you were my miracle patient," Dr. Kim said, his voice filled with the quiet satisfaction of someone who had staked everything on an impossible outcome and won. "But the truth is, you're proof that sometimes miracles and medicine work together in ways we don't fully understand." Marla's visit to the hospital became an impromptu celebration of hope and perseverance. Word spread quickly through the medical center about the woman who had been dead for 6 days and come back to life. Medical students and residents asked to meet her, wanting to hear firsthand about her experience and understand how such an unlikely recovery was possible. During her visit, Marla made a point of returning to the cardiac ICU where she had spent the most critical days of her life. Standing beside the bed where she had lain unconscious, she tried to process the magnitude of what had happened to her. The ECMO machine that had kept her alive was now serving another patient, continuing its mission of providing mechanical life support to those whose hearts needed time to heal. The impact of Marla's recovery extended far beyond her own life. Her case became a teaching example for medical students and residents, proof that sometimes the most important medical decision is the decision to keep fighting when conventional wisdom suggests it's time to stop. Dr. Kim incorporated her story into his lectures, using it to illustrate the importance of hope, perseverance, and the willingness to push beyond traditional medical boundaries when a patient's life hangs in the balance. As Marla prepared to leave the hospital that day, she made one final request. She wanted to see the room where her family had waited during her 6 days on ECMO, the place where her husband and children had maintained their vigil of hope while her life hung by a thread thinner than the tubes that connected her to the machine that breathed for her. Standing in that waiting room, surrounded by the people who had refused to give up on her, Marla understood that her survival was about more than medical expertise or technological miracles. It was about the power of love, faith, and the human capacity to believe in impossible things when impossible things are all you have left to believe in. Today, Marla Levy lives a life that she was told might never be possible. Her heart, once broken and struggling, now beats with the strength and regularity of someone half her age. She exercises regularly, travels with her family, and has returned to all the activities that make life worth living. The mechanical valve clicks softly in her chest, a constant reminder of how close she came to losing everything and how much she gained by refusing to give up. Dr. Kim continues his work as Chief of Adult Cardiothoracic Surgery at UCSF, but Marla's case changed him in ways that extend far beyond medical technique. He approaches each patient with renewed understanding that sometimes healing requires patience, faith, and the willingness to believe in outcomes that medical textbooks say are impossible. Her story has become his reminder that being called Dr. Miracle isn't about possessing supernatural powers. It's about having the courage to fight for life when everyone else has stopped fighting. The message of Marla's story echoes through the halls of hospitals around the world. That hope is not just an emotion, but a treatment plan. That sometimes the most important medicine is the refusal to accept defeat. And that miracles, when they happen in modern medicine, are usually the result of combining cutting-edge technology with old-fashioned determination and the simple belief that every life is worth saving. For anyone facing their own medical battle, Marla's journey offers a powerful reminder that survival is possible even when survival seems impossible. Her heart stopped beating for 6 days, but her story will continue beating in the hearts of everyone who hears it, reminding us all that sometimes the greatest victories come to those who refuse to surrender, even when surrender seems like the only option left. In the end, Marla Levy's cardiac survival story is more than a medical case study. It's a testament to the power of hope, the strength of human connection, and the truth that sometimes miracles happen one heartbeat at a time.